I, Aisha, stepped out of the rental car. The black dress I wore felt heavy, suffocating. Just hours ago, I had said my final goodbye to my mother. The loss was a huge, empty space inside my chest, a space where strength and light used to be. The sun was hot on my skin, but I felt only cold. I walked up the smooth concrete of the driveway. Every step was a struggle. I was moving on autopilot, just wanting to be inside, in the quiet darkness of my own home, to finally let the exhaustion of the past 3 days swallow me whole. I needed David, my husband, to pull me into his arms and tell me everything would be okay. I needed the familiar comfort of my space. David wasn't at the funeral. He said he had a critical, career-making meeting. I accepted the lie, because I had to. His mother, Joyce, was the one who called me right after the burial. Her voice, always sweet and sticky like cheap syrup, held a cold, hard edge. "You need to focus on David, Aisha. Your mother's resting. David is working. Priorities." I hung up without a word. I reached the porch. The air was still. My hand went to my purse, ready for my keys. But my eyes stopped on the front door. Something was wrong. The metal around the lock plate, usually scratched and worn from years of use, was gleaming. It was too new, too shiny. I pulled out my keys anyway, my hand trembling slightly. I slid the house key toward the deadbolt. It struck the metal and stopped dead. A thin, ugly scrape sound. Disbelief was a physical blow. I tried the bottom lock. Same thing. My key, the key to my life, was useless. My small, black suitcase, holding the only clothes I had, slipped from my fingers. It hit the porch floor with a hollow thump. I was locked out. The thought was so simple, so impossible, that it paralyzed me. Then, my phone buzzed. A text message. From Joyce. I didn't want to open it, but the chilling certainty of what it contained forced my thumb to the screen. "Joycey, don't bother Aisha. The locks are done. You are too emotional to come back here right now." David agreed. The world shattered. The grief for my mother was instantly overwhelmed by the tidal wave of betrayal. David agreed. My husband. While I was burying the woman who raised me, he was agreeing with his mother to deny me entry to the home I thought we shared. The humiliation was instant and absolute. I crumpled onto the top step, the rough wood digging into the expensive fabric of my funeral dress. Tears poured from my eyes, hot, salty, and furious. They weren't tears for my mother now. They were tears for the death of my marriage, the death of trust, the death of the life I had so carefully constructed. I was sobbing, abandoned, standing outside my own beautiful home with nowhere to go. Too emotional. The words felt like a brand on my soul. I cried until the tears ran dry, until my throat was raw and my vision was clear. Then, something hard and cold settled in my stomach. A quiet, familiar rage. My mother had taught me that when the world tries to take everything, you fight back with everything you have. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was the quiet, easily discarded wife. They had no idea about the secret I had guarded for years. The secret that made this house, David's pride, and Joyce's entire financial comfort possible. I wiped my face, the black mascara streaks feeling like war paint. David and Joyce had just activated my escape plan. They thought I was begging for entry. They had no idea I was about to seize the entire kingdom. David didn't know the most important, terrifying truth. I was the financial mastermind of our life, the silent architect of his entire career. He thought he was paying the mortgage, but he wasn't. He thought he had a massive life insurance policy, but the payments came from me. He thought his mother was his savior, but she was entirely dependent on a security system I put in place. By locking me out, they had signed their own financial death warrant. I was the one who owned the house, the business, and all the debt, and tonight, I was going to collect every single cent. I stood up. I picked up my suitcase. I did not call David. I called Mr. Harris, the quiet, older lawyer who handled all my family's estate matters. He answered immediately, his voice heavy with condolences. "Thank you, Mr. Harris," I said, my voice low and steady. "I need your help. The locks have been changed on my house." The betrayal was no longer pain. It was a cold, pure focus. I explained the situation to Mr. Harris, the simple cruelty of Joyce's text and David's agreement. "David's name is on the deed, Aisha. "This is going to be messy," Mr. Harris warned gently. "It won't be messy, Mr. Harris," I corrected him. "David thinks he has a mortgage. He thinks he is the financial backbone of this home." I remembered the early days of our marriage. David, full of bravado, had crashed his first business venture badly. His credit was a joke. We couldn't qualify for a loan to buy a shed, much less a house in this area. David was devastated. He wanted to rent, but I knew that would kill his pride. My father had left me a successful landscaping company. I sold it, quietly, using a proxy company so David would never know the source of the funds. I told David I had found a creative financing firm willing to back us because of his potential. He was thrilled, swallowing the story hook, line, and sinker. I had executed a massive single lump sum payment on the closing day. The house was paid off in full. I allowed David to sign the papers, to meet with the loan officer I had hired, and to receive a monthly statement that looked exactly like a mortgage. The truth was, that mortgage payment only covered the property taxes, the building insurance, and the high-end HOA fees I couldn't prepay in advance. David was paying the maintenance, but the core asset was mine, fully owned, no debt. "Mr. Harris," I said, my voice hardening with finality, "I need you to contact the city registry office now. Initiate the sole ownership transfer based on the pre-existing sealed agreement we signed. The document clearly states that if either party is found to have committed marital abandonment or financial fraud, the sole funder may reclaim full ownership without penalty. Locking me out of the home during my mother's funeral qualifies as both." I heard the rapid click of his keyboard. "It will be done, Aisha. The legal paperwork stating you are the sole owner will be filed within the hour." "What about David's reaction?" "David's reaction is no longer my problem," I replied. "Now, let's talk about the business." I logged into the secure financial dashboard I had managed for years. This was the part of my life David never saw: the spreadsheets, the asset protection, the constant, silent work of keeping his life from imploding. David ran a consulting firm. He was charismatic, but his financial judgment was reckless. Every year, he would make huge, terrible investments, or lose huge clients due to poor planning. His firm was always one mistake away from complete collapse. Joyce would always swoop in, giving him small loans and telling him how brilliant he was, all while making sure I knew I was inferior. I knew that if the business failed, David would be destroyed, and Joyce would be financially responsible for him. I couldn't allow that. I had used the third, a largest part of my family inheritance to set up an elaborate safety net. I created the Business Stabilization Trust. It was legally structured as an anonymous institutional line of credit for David's firm. He genuinely believed he had negotiated a brilliant deal, securing a massive, revolving credit line based on his potential. Every time he overspent or lost a client, he would draw on the line of credit to pay his staff or cover losses. Aisha, was the one who replenished that credit line instantly from my trust, ensuring the balance was always full. I kept his business running and profitable, protecting his ego and his employees. He thought he was a financial genius. He was a child playing with my money. I also thought about Joyce. She relied on the massive life insurance policy David carried, thinking it was paid for by his company. But I paid those hefty premiums, using a separate, anonymous bank account. I did that because I knew Joyce would be helpless without David, and I wanted the protection for her if David ever died. The betrayal on the porch had erased all those years of quiet devotion and silent protection. I started typing. First, the life insurance policy. The beneficiary document was immediately updated to transfer all claims and ownership to a trust managed by Mr. Harris, with me as the sole beneficiary. Joyce's entire financial safety net, the comfortable retirement she envisioned for herself and David, was gone. Second, the Business Stabilization Trust. I sent a single, coded instruction to the trust manager: terminate the account. Recall all principal. Effective immediately. I could almost feel the cold rush of panic hitting David's office. Tomorrow morning, his financial team would inform him that his massive line of credit was gone. His fragile business, which had only stayed afloat because of my constant, silent replenishment, would collapse into instant ruin. Payroll wouldn't clear. Rent wouldn't be paid. I had untethered him completely. The house was gone. The security was gone. The business was gone. The sky was a deep inky black, but the city below was a sprawling, glittering carpet of light. My heart was calm, but my hands were still trembling from the cold precision of the last 2 hours. I had stripped David of his major assets, but I hadn't touched the one thing he loved more than the house, more than the business, and maybe even more than me, his black, luxury SUV. David drove that huge, gleaming car like a king. He loved the noise it made, the way it made him look important. He would spend hours polishing it, obsessing over the tires and the interior. It was the physical symbol of his ego. David thought he had a great lease-to-own agreement on the car. He struggled with the massive monthly payments, always shuffling money around to cover them. 3 months ago, he was about to lose the car. He had missed a payment, and the leasing company was sending final notices. I used the very last piece of my personal savings to quietly purchase the full, outstanding loan from the leasing company. The paperwork was handled by a separate holding company I controlled. David was notified that his loan had been transferred to a new financial partner with better terms. He never read the fine print, he just saw his car was safe, and his pride was intact. He thought he had dodged a bullet. He had walked into a cage. He owed the debt to me. I logged into the holding company's portal. This was the final, devastating move. I initiated the legal paperwork for immediate repossession. The notice would be served at his office tomorrow, stating that the new debt holder, my company, had reviewed his history of delinquency and was recalling the full remaining loan balance immediately. Failure to pay within 24 hours would result in the seizure of the asset. I knew he had no way to pay. His business funds were frozen. His credit line was gone. His mother had no access to the policy I controlled. The man who had agreed to lock me out of the house would wake up the next morning facing homelessness, bankruptcy, and the seizure of his most beloved possession. I checked the time. It was 3 a.m. The eviction notice for the house, the notice for the car, and the notification of the frozen assets would all hit David's world within the next 6 hours. They would wake up as owners and be ruined by noon. I smiled, a cold, empty feeling. The tears of humiliation were fully gone, replaced by the deep, quiet satisfaction of absolute control. My mother had taught me to build my own fortress. I had done that. And now, I was using the tools I had built to tear down the world that tried to crush me. I drove the rental car back to my street as the sun rose. The light was beautiful, golden, and deceptive. I parked right in front of my driveway. David's black SUV sat there, gleaming in the morning light. The quiet beauty of the house was a cruel joke. I got out of the car. I walked up to the porch steps, the same steps where I had cried yesterday. Today, I was wearing simple jeans and a fierce, red sweater, a color of life and defiance. I looked at the lock. It was still new, still shiny. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, heavy packet. It contained the new key to the lock, which Mr. Harris had couriered to my hotel room hours ago. I now had the right to enter, and they had no right to be inside. Just as I raised my hand to knock, a huge, yellow tow truck rumbled down the street. It stopped right behind my rental car. I had timed it perfectly. 2 men in blue uniforms climbed out. One of them approached me. "Ma'am, we're here for the black SUV VIN number check complete." "That's the one," I said, pointing. The loud metallic groan of the tow truck lowering its ramp filled the quiet, upscale neighborhood. The sound was harsh, final, and inescapable. Suddenly, the front door burst open. David stood there in his silk robe, a coffee cup in his hand. He looked stunned, his sleep-heavy eyes trying to process the sight of the tow truck chaining his car. "What is this? You can't touch that!" he yelled, rushing onto the porch. Joyce was right behind him, her face instantly twisting into a mask of rage. "David, what is happening? Call the police. They are stealing our car." David saw me. I was standing on the lawn, watching the repossession unfold. His face lost all color. "Aisha, what are you doing here? Get off my property. You're trespassing." The tow truck driver started the winch. The huge black SUV scraped, lifted, and was secured onto the lift, ready to be taken away. "It's not your property, David," I said. my voice quiet, simple, and cold. I didn't yell. There was no need. The sound of the winch was louder than any scream. The house legally belongs to me now. I paid for it in full 5 years ago. And that car, I nodded toward the retreating truck, was seized for non-payment of a debt that you owe to a company I own. Joyce gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. That's a lie. David paid for everything. He's a successful man. He's a man who runs on my money, Joyce. I corrected her. The line of credit for his successful business was terminated 4 hours ago. The life insurance policy you rely on was transferred to my name 6 hours ago. And you are both currently occupying a house that is legally mine, having broken the terms of the spousal agreement by committing abandonment and illegal lockout. I walked up the steps and stopped right in front of David. His eyes were wide and blank, staring into a newly empty future. He was a man watching his entire life, the house, the car, the career drive away in a truck. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single, cold piece of gold I had saved, my wedding band. I didn't hand it to him. I dropped it onto the porch, right where David's coffee stain still showed. The police are on their way, David. I finished. They are coming to enforce the eviction order that Mr. Harris just filed. I'm going inside my house now. You and your mother have 10 minutes to collect your personal belongings and vacate the property before you are charged with trespass. I walked past them. I ignored Joyce's rising shriek. I put my new key into the lock. It slid in smoothly. It turned with a satisfying, decisive click. I walked into the home I had paid for. I closed the door behind me. I leaned against the cool wood of the front door. The silence inside the house, a deep, profound peace. I had come home from my mother's funeral, broken and abandoned, with one suitcase. I now stood in the center of the kingdom they thought they had stolen. I had been locked out by betrayal, but I had returned in power. The grief was still there, a soft memory of my mother's love, but the triumph was a roaring fire in my soul. I was free, financially whole, and the master of my own life. That was the perfect goodbye to my old life, and the only way to honor the woman who raised me to fight.